All right, you guys, welcome back to another episode of the Rebranded Athlete Podcast. We are live, and I am so excited to be here, you guys. This has been such a long time coming with everybody that's involved behind the scenes. And here today, I have a special guest. Welcome to season 3, where we are taking everything live this year. And I decided to really shake things up this season and try something new. Like that's what it's all about. So I'm on a mission to support athletes as they move away from the game and into the next season of their life. And that's what I've always hoped the Rebranded Athlete podcast has brought. And so what better way than to actually interact with you guys? So during this podcast, you guys are listening either on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. We would love for you guys to interact today. You're able to drop comments in, ask questions, and really be involved and kind of be like a fly on the wall with the conversation. So on this podcast, you're going to hear stories of other athletes and experts who understand how to navigate in life after sports. And so, like I mentioned, make sure that you feel free to ask us questions. I got a very special guest today who I'm going to introduce to you guys in just a moment here. And if you are unable to catch us live, remember that there will always be a replay available for you guys right after we go live. So you can catch that on all the different platforms and even the normal podcasts, the platform that you usually listen to, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And make sure to follow Rebranded Athlete on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, so you guys don't miss any announcements coming up. I've got a lot of things in the works. And without further ado, I would love to introduce the guest for today. And when I tell you guys that this has been a long time coming, let me tell you, it's been a long time coming. Taj and I go back to when I first started my work in the athlete transition space. And it is so great to finally get him on the podcast. I've been, meaning to have him on here, but hey, life happens and no better time than right now. So Taj Dashaun is a former athlete. He played football for Stony Brook University. He's a multi-published author and podcaster as well. And he is the founder and CEO of Thrive After Sports, along with being the vice president of Self-Published in 30 Days. And again, Taj was the first person that I reached out to when I started the transition work, and no questions asked. This guy was always ready and willing to help. And Taj, it's such an honor to have you today. I consider you to be one of my teammates right now in life after sports. So welcome to the Rebranded Athlete Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Dr. Sarah. First of all, thank you so much for having me. Congratulations on your season 3 launch. I love what you've done with the place. Everything looks wonderful. The intro had me ready to run. I saw the little guy running on your logo. I'm like, man, I might need to go for a jog after this. But honored to be the first guest. Congrats. And like you said, we are definitely teammates. So I'm excited for everything that's going to come from this conversation today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And yeah, thanks for being willing to be the first one up here. I know it's going to be a great episode. So you guys who are tuning in right now, I'm telling you, every time Taj is in the room, I've got tons of notes that I take. So whether you got a notebook in front of you or you got your notes on your phone, he's going to drop some gems right now and you're going to want to make sure that you gather all of them. So Taj, let's talk a little bit because, there's some people who are listening to the podcast who have maybe never heard you before. So let's talk about a little bit about your athletic experience. How did you get into football? Tell us a little bit about Stony Brook and your experience as a collegiate athlete.
Yeah, so my origin story is I remember watching Remember the Titans in theaters. I was 10 years old when that movie dropped, I believe. I think it came out in 2000s. I was like 9 or 10. Watching the movie, I had been playing soccer and basketball and a bunch of other sports up to that point, and I was like, I want to play football. Just the idea of being able to hit people and not get in trouble. Plus watching the movie, Denzel Washington's performance had me hyped up, ready to go hit somebody, and started playing football. I had a cousin who was 5 years older than me, Kevin Ross Jr. He was playing football in LA. Can't remember the school right now, but long story short, I saw him get a scholarship to Cal to play safety. And I didn't even know. I was like, what, you can get a scholarship to play football? And from then that became my goal. Like probably like 11, 12 years old is when I made the decision I wanted to get a scholarship. My high school career didn't exactly, I got a few offers, no really notable schools. The schools that did offer me that I was interested in ended up, pulling offers, different coaching changes. You know how the game works.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm. So I ended up because it ended up being the best decision for me. I had a great experience at Stony Brook. ended up at Stony Brook, and yeah, I think I kind of went into it with a big head, just being young and having an ego. Not that my head isn't still big now, but just from an ego perspective, I came into it and I was like, man, I wasn't supposed to be here, and I'm supposed to be at a bigger school. So that was like a rough start, and then that just kind of affected the rest of my career there. I think I rubbed a lot of the coaches the wrong way, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But the fact that I didn't go to a school that wasn't my dream school, didn't have a great career, and didn't make it to the NFL. Oh, and then didn't know what I wanted to do afterwards. Those like 4 or 5 different things just created like this, avalanche effect of what I experienced after the game of football.
Yeah. And it's so true with so many different athletes too. Like one of the things as well is, you're not alone, especially with going into school, like not knowing what you want to do and coming out and having no clue either. And just out of curiosity, what did you end up majoring in?
So I got a basket weaving degree, underwater basket weaving.
Majored in eligibility.
Right. I've never heard that before. That's good. I like that. I majored in eligibility. That's fire. I got to start using that one.
Nice.
It's called multidisciplinary studies, but it's basically like 3 majors rolled into one, so they make it easy for you to pass. But I always just say communications, because communications was one of the components of the 3. So when people ask me, I just say communications. But truthfully, it was that one, multidisciplinary studies.
Yeah, something that you could use
right
somewhere, someplace. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So without having a plan, and again, like those of us who are athletes, we know that that is such a really weird time, because I remember even for myself, like having a plan, even though, same thing. I went to school, got a degree, like I had a plan afterwards, but even with a plan, things don't really go the way that they're supposed to. So what was your plan going out with that multifunctional degree that you had into the next thing that you were going to do? What was your ultimate goal next?
There was no ultimate goal
No.
whatsoever. I had absolutely no idea. I honestly thought that I would go back home and somebody, not literally, would show up on my doorstep, but I thought just by like creating a LinkedIn profile, maybe just reaching out to my connections, that someone would be willing to give me a job just because I was, a D1 football player. Obviously that didn't happen. So, there was no plan. I just kind of figured everything would be handed to me on a silver platter, like it always had been.
Right.
So I had to figure it out. I had no vision for what I wanted to do. I did always know deep down that I didn't want to do something that made me miserable. And this is no disrespect. I have 2 great parents, gave my brother and I a great life. But I always noticed, even as at a young age, that when they would come home from work, they were exhausted. They were complaining about what happened, and they just had no fulfillment and satisfaction or even reason for being there aside from a check. So I think I made that decision at an early age that like, that doesn't make sense. And we're fortunate to live in a time where we can create and customize what we do for work. They didn't have that opportunity, of course, but that's kind of where my head was at. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that long term, my plan was not to do that. Something that I was just doing strictly for money,
Yeah. Yeah. And so how did you find yourself navigating that situation? Like, was there somebody that was in your life at the time that you were able to talk to, or maybe even old teammates that you were still connected with? Because I know for myself, like I felt like I was isolated and alone and I was the only one going through that. But were you able to kind of, lean into somebody at that time?
No, I felt isolated and alone too. And that was really of my own doing. It's not like I didn't have great people around me who would have been willing to, hear me out or just help me. But I didn't really even know, I didn't quite understand what I was going through in terms of like the transition or why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And I didn't think other people would understand. So I didn't even open up to people or even my own family. My teammates, I had some teammates who I played with in high school who went off to play, D1 and stuff too. And then a few of us were back at home at the same time in our hometown. And we were just getting together, like kind of talking about what we were going through, but none of us had answers. So it was just like this collective group of guys going out, partying, drinking, trying to mask what we were going through and complaining because we couldn't get a job, like even though we didn't know what types of jobs we wanted. So yeah, that's where I was at.
Yeah. And that masking part that you talk about, I think so many athletes go through that. And even for myself. So like I got into the phase of, just going out and partying because, and I think part of it was that I never really had the opportunity to have like that type of like college lifestyle, either because we we're so bound to like, being committed to our sports and our academics and all that type of stuff. So then afterwards, I'm like, okay, well, I guess this is how like I'm going to numb the pain. And we've seen so often right now that there are athletes who are having these challenges, not just when they leave the game, but we're now starting to see athletes who are having a hard time with the pressure, you know, of being an elite athlete and not being able to maybe, you know, perform at that level and have that expectation. And so I know that there's so many, you know, athletes out there, and, you know, if you guys are listening and you need, you know, help or support, I think the one biggest thing, especially what Taj is saying here, is like there were people that were surrounding him, right? Like he had people around, but being able to, you know, speak up and say, hey, you know, I'm going through something and I need some help. And I think what sports has taught us, especially the old school mentality of when you and I played, is like, suck it up, you know, and, you know, carry on. I don't know if you had that same experience, but that's how, you know, I was taught.
100%. That mentality definitely carried over. And that's a good point you bring up because, you know, even like you said, athletes now, they have so much more pressure on them than we did. Like, not to date myself, but I'm going to date myself. Instagram didn't even really blow up until my senior year of college. So it's not like I had to worry about, you know, I mean, I went to Stony Brook anyway. It's not like people are going to be commenting on the games and all that. But I just think about players who are concerned about like their public image in terms of social media and have people leaving hateful comments if they lose a game and all that type of stuff. So I think what you said is so important, like just being able to reach out to people, whether it's a therapist or just talking to friends or family members, like that goes a long way with getting it off your chest so it doesn't just exist between your own two ears where it becomes dangerous if it's left, you know, unattended for too long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And if you're dating yourself there, man, Instagram wasn't even a thing when I was there. MySpace was the thing that was happening during my time. I just had to throw that in there. Make you feel like you're not alone. But yeah, no, definitely. And that's the thing. It's like, you know, athletes are now brands, especially with the NIL, and, you know, all these people are constantly like watching everything that they're doing, whether how they, you know, performed on the field or what they're doing outside of the sport. And I think that's, you know, we're at such a place in time right now where that can either really help enhance an athlete, you know, even after the game is over, because, you know, you've already established yourself as a brand, or if you're not making the greatest decisions, or if it's affecting you, you know, because people, you know, are having their opinions. I think that can also navigate athletes to maybe go down routes that they don't want to go down. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I also want to talk a little bit too. So especially with your transition out, and how did you get into like the mindset of even becoming an entrepreneur? Was that something that you kind of already had in yourself, or was there somebody that inspired you to become one?
I was inspired by like unfortunately rappers, which this is going to go into the stigma of like, you know, how black and brown folks a lot of times just look at themselves as athletes or, you know, entertainers. And so to me, like I said earlier, not wanting to work a traditional 9 to 5 or be in like a cubicle somewhere, I was like, well, I live close enough, or at the time living in California, I live close enough to Hollywood. Maybe I can get into the music industry. Like I had been making beats and stuff in college. So that was my approach. Like, I'm just going to make music. And you know, not that I didn't enjoy it as a hobby, but once I got into the industry, I was like, I even did some internships in the industry, like public relations places.
Oh wow, I didn't
And
know that about you.
yeah, I don't know if I've ever shared. It's like
Yeah.
it was like a year that I did that before I got into my first like job out of college. But my point is, I brought that up because I was looking for something that was out of the world of, you know, corporate America where I could be creative. What I quickly realized was that it wasn't the type of thing that was going to happen quickly. And I was like, I'm not willing to be a starving artist. That was like a real conversation I had with myself. I'm not going to be like 10 years, you know, couch surfing, trying to, you know, blow up as an artist. And so I realized it was more of a hobby for me than something I really wanted to do. And then at that point, my focus shifted to be like, okay, I need to get a job, get back on my feet so I can start feeling, you know, adulting, feeling like I'm an adult, get out of my parents' house, get my own spot, and just like, you know, not feel like I was a burden on my parents, because that was kind of contributing to my, you know, mental health too, being like, not only did I not make it to the league so I could, you know, be that difference maker in my family, But now I'm, eating up all the groceries and I don't have money to chip in, on the mortgage and different things like that. So I was like, damn, I got to get on my feet,
Yeah. 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 And do you think it's, is it still like a side hobby that you have? Like, do you still find joy in doing that?
I do. Yeah. I
Yeah.
recently I realized I wasn't doing it as much as I used to. And it's good because it takes me away. I get to be creative and it's like totally unrelated to anything I do business wise. Like
Right.
last night, I spent probably like an hour and a half just like making a new beat. I might start posting them on my podcast or using them
Yeah.
for music. I think I'm gonna start
Man,
doing
maybe I might have to get a new intro song here.
that.
Taj
I
Dashaun, I
got
love
you.
it.
I got
Yeah,
you.
that's great. And I think that's, like thinking about life after sports, because we're so focused on our sport the whole time. And I remember even teammates too, like being multi-talented in different areas. And we attach ourselves so much with the label of, just being that athlete that afterwards we don't really give ourselves, the space or freedom to really explore these other areas of creativity. And for you to have, I mean, honestly, I've known you what now, Taj, like 2.5 years. I had no idea you could drop a beat.
It's not something I really talk about too much because I don't want to be like, I don't want people to look at me and be like, this guy think he's a rapper. I never tried to rap, but I do make
Yeah.
some pretty good beats. So
Yeah.
I'll send you some stuff. Maybe we'll get you an intro for the logo you
A little
got
Running
running.
Man, huh?
Yeah, we'll get you a Running Man beat.
Oh my God, I love it. That's so great. And so, yeah, so let's talk a little bit about, I refer to this a lot as like the golden skill set or like, what we learned during sports. So what would you say are some of the things that you learned through football that maybe even you go back to today, that you refer to or that help you in your life, whether it's your personal life or even being an entrepreneur? Can you think of anything, any lessons that you learned or any skills as an athlete?
First of all, golden skill set definitely got written down. That's you teach you got all kind of coin phrases over there. First
I
it was majored in
didn't even
eligibility.
notice. These are just things I say.
Oh, 'cause most people, as you know, say transferable skills.
Mhm.
Golden skill set sounds much better and is much cooler.
Well, thank you.
So yeah, that was written down. Okay, so my golden skill set. Um, Definitely what all boils down to one thing. Like well, with football specifically, and I played defense, so I was the one delivering the boom versus
Mhm.
receiving it. I played receiver in high school, but I got my scholarship to play defense. So to me, that comes with the level of fearlessness. Like, football players are crazy. You know I'm crazy, Sarah. So to play football, to run
Not
full
crazy,
speed,
Todd.
like to run full speed into another grown man who is the same size or bigger than you gotta be a little bit
Okay,
crazy.
I'll give you that.
Right. So to me, that fearlessness in business and entrepreneurship and like, reaching out to people to make opportunities happen or to collaborate, that fearlessness is still with me. But also the main thing that could apply to any athlete, not just, limited to football players, is just getting better every single day.
Mm,
And I feel like for the nature of what we do with helping athletes transition, that's the best thing you can do. Like that's what I was doing when I was unclear. While you're in the process of figuring out what you want to do, like just focus on getting better. Figuring out what you want to do is a skill that has to be worked on. Like you've heard me say before, clarity has to be cultivated. So to me, as athletes, that's the biggest thing that we can do is like, even though you may not be where you want to be, just focus on doing something every single day that's going to make you better. And always don't look at other people and start like comparing yourself to them. Just compete with the
right.
person in the mirror in a healthy way. Compete with the person in the mirror to be better than the version of yourself you were yesterday. So
Yeah, that comparison game can be such a trap, and again, it's like you see it, and we live in a time where we see it all the time on social media, right? Like we're constantly like comparing ourselves to other people. And I think that's why, sometimes, people don't have like the greatest relationships with, social media. Some people want nothing to do with it. But on the other hand, it is such a great space for people to be able to collaborate. Like you and I, had Instagram not existed, I'm not sure that you and I would have connected. But when we start to compare, like we don't really know the backstory or where people started from, right? Because everybody, I think, everybody starts, but some people start in different places. And so it just depends, I think, on, your mindset and your skill set. And when I talk about like the golden skill set, like what we have as athletes, I think in the workforce, whether you go into corporate or you start your own business, like we're already coming equipped with these skills that are golden, that employers want to see, because we're coachable, we're goal oriented, we're go-getters, like we're able to problem solve, like all these different things that I think a lot of us didn't realize. We learned all that through our sport. Everybody has an opportunity, I think, to learn those skills, but for us, we actually got to, show up every day and compete and, come back to the table and, get better, and the times that, you got tackled or whatnot, like I'm sure you didn't just lay there on the ground, unless you were hurt. you got back up and you're ready for the next play. And I think, having that mindset, and the same thing with volleyball, like I'll, do the volleyball analogies for those that are listening too, but it's the same thing. You go up and you get blocked, you figure out another way of doing things. And I think that's the beauty. And maybe you've seen this as being an entrepreneur, is that what I've seen in the last 2.5 years is that no 2 days are the same. Even if we structure our days the way that we think they're going to be, like we're always having to adapt to either the times, our clients, like whatever it is, we're having to adapt to whatever that day holds. And we could have the best plan in the world, but we have to, know what is right. And I think that's, the same thing that we did when we were in the game. Like, I don't know if you saw it before with your coaches, but they'd have like this elaborate game plan, right? All week long, we'd be, practicing and, doing the things that we knew were going to shut down that team. And then we show up at the game, and all of a sudden that team has a totally different game plan.
Right.
So we have to shift and adapt, because otherwise, if we stuck to the old game plan, we're going to get our butts whooped.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
As Darren Palmer always says, I think he actually stole this from Mike Tyson, but I'm gonna give Darren credit for it. He says everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And that's pretty much what you just summed up with entrepreneurship. I know you've been through it. I've been through it. It's a constant day-to-day battle. And I don't mean to make it sound scary, but like that's what we do. We're gamers, we're competitors. So we wake up every day and play the game of life, just in a different way now, with our minds instead of our bodies,
Right. Yeah. So just kind of throw this out here. So let's focus on, because I know we talk a lot about like college athletics, but let's focus on pros, for example. So I know that I went to school with a couple of guys that ended up going pro, like baseball or whatnot. And they had the opportunity to, be recruited or, go to the pros and leave the school site, knowing that if they left, they wouldn't be able to come back and, continue to play because they've been sent up to the pros. So for them, after they've gone through and they've completed their professional career, whether it was just a couple of years or some of them have been, in the majors for a long time, what would you say to one of those pro athletes that didn't get to finish school and they're trying to figure out what's next? Do you think it's more beneficial for them to go back to school and maybe finish that degree or do a different degree? Or do you think it's more beneficial for them to like take that skill set they have as an athlete or maybe their brand and then turn it into being an entrepreneur or maybe a business? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. And my answer would be, it depends. And I say that because for some people, like you said, if they have a brand or they have some sort of plan for what they're going to do already that doesn't require a degree, then really what's the point of going back to school? If you have a degree that's going to get you a job, to put some money back in your pocket, maybe even while you try to build other things, then yeah, you should go back and finish that degree, especially if you're close, right? So, but the main thing is like, what it all comes down to is no matter which situation you're in, whether you need to finish your degree or you need to figure out if you're going to, start a brand or build a business or just, land a job that you can get without a degree, no matter which one of those situations you're in, still it comes down to like having a clear game plan for what you want to do. Right. And understanding why you're doing what you're doing. Because too many people, as you know, will go back to school just because it's safe. Like some people hide out in school. Like, I think it's the people like, I know they're like they're getting education with like no plan of what to do with it. I know some people who graduated from college, went out into the real world, tried to get a job, couldn't get anything or didn't like what they saw and just went back to get a master's. And I'm like, what are you getting a master's for? What are you getting a master's in? Oh, I don't know. I think it'll help me with, getting a higher paying job. Oh, well, what kind of job? What kind of field do you want to get into? Oh, well, I'm not really sure. Right. So just, it all comes down to having a clear why for why you're doing what you're doing and making sure that the steps that you're taking are actually going to get you there versus just doing what you think is right or what someone else told you is the right path. Because the only right path is the path for you that you create. Not to sound cliche, but that's how I feel.
No, exactly. And I think you bring up such a great point because it's that inner work that we need to do, especially with our identities, and even for myself, like I had my plan of what I was going to do, but even then, I mean, we're so young, right? Like when we're supposed to, pick these degrees of what we're going to do next. And even for the people that, went back to school later on, a lot of people who are, just going to school to go to school, maybe they haven't spent the time like getting to know themselves and knowing like what else they're good at. And I know for me, because I spent so much time in the gym playing volleyball and everything was geared towards that, I really didn't give myself enough like creativity to discover other things. And it wasn't until like I ventured out from like the corporate bubble, I think that like in the last 2.5 years, like I've discovered all kinds of things that I like even thinking about podcasting, right? No way if you had told me like even 3 years ago that I was going to start a podcast and do this and actually want to develop a business and, go live, like try new things. Like I was never that way because I only knew like one thing. And so I think part of it is like when we leave our sports, we need to give ourselves enough grace and opportunity to explore things and try stuff, because I think it's just as important to know what you like as it is of the things that you don't like in
100%.
life. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I don't have anything to add to that. I just thought that was a great point.
Oh,
Knowing
thanks.
what you don't like is equally as important, if not more important in some cases.
Absolutely. I would agree too. So let's talk about what you're up to. Thrive After Sports. And again, we probably have some new listeners here who have not heard about it. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you do and what you're up to?
Well, this could easily finish up the rest of the hour. So
Let's
I'm
do
we'll
it.
try to keep it as brief as possible. So Thrive After Sports is many different things. It's my coaching program. It's my podcast. It's the name of my first book. To me, what it represents, the reason I even call my coaching program or just the brand in general, Thrive After Sports, is exactly what we're just talking about. Like it came from the idea of not just surviving, but thriving. That's why I even have the little flame on top of the logo, because for so long I felt like I was really just surviving, just getting by, just checking the boxes. Okay, cool. I got a job. I'm paying my rent. I'm adulting, versus like, what do I actually want from life? What is the vision that I have for my future and for my family? What type of, impact do I want to leave on this world? That's where the thriving side comes from. So when I started doing the coaching, this was 2017, really like rolling into 2018 before I really got serious about it. And it just started off as one-on-one coaching. And that's still the thing I enjoy with all the other things, being one-on-one with the former athlete like you and I, and coaching them through their transition, whether they just graduated or they're, 5-10 years removed. That is still the thing I enjoy more than anything, and what it's turned into aside from the coaching is, I started a podcast, of course, because I was putting out content and I didn't just want it to like be one post and done. I'm like, well, if I'm going to record these videos or these audios, then I want to put them out as a podcast. And then the podcast became like interviewing great people like yourself who are also serving the former and current athlete community. And then I also have some episodes where I'll interview people who have gone through my program so they can kind of share their experience. Of course, it's a great testimonial for me, but it also gives listeners a chance to like hear from a different perspective, like what their transition is like from someone who just went through it. Then along the way, I mentioned Darren Palmer earlier, connected with Darren. He helped me publish my first book, Thrive After Sports. The next book after that, you and I co-authored together, Athlete to Entrepreneur. And I have 2 more co-author books that'll probably be out within the next 2 to 3 months officially. So that was a great partnership. Not only becoming an author myself and seeing all the doors that opened up in terms of like speaking and just a bunch of opportunities that, there's a ton, but also being able to help other athletes write, publish, and tell their stories and get their books out to the world. So as I always say, this bald hat wears many hats, but I enjoy every single one of them. And
Yeah.
ultimately, like, it all comes back to the same thing. Like I said, no matter what I'm doing, the focus is like, basically, how is this going to help the younger version of us, the people who are like, I don't know who I am outside of my sport. I don't know what I want to do, or I got a job, but this job sucks. I really want to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
Everything I do comes back to that ultimately.
And you have been a busy guy. You're a 4-time author now. Like, that's
I know.
amazing. And then besides, like, how many other people you've helped? Like, you helped me with my book, as part of your co-authoring book as well. But that must feel amazing to be, the person. I like, honestly, you were like the go-to person when I was looking into it. I'm like, Taj knows what he's doing.
I appreciate that. That's a high compliment. That means a lot. I think
Yeah.
sometimes when it comes to the publishing side, like, I'm very aware of what I've done in the athlete transition space because I take a lot of pride in it. When it
Mhm.
comes to like what you just said, helping others become authors, I think because I've been in it and there's always a project going on and there's always like chaos, but in a good way, trying to get all this stuff done. I have
Organized chaos.
organized chaos. I haven't really taken the time to. I imagine myself being like an old man one day, like looking at this bookshelf of books that I helped people publish or even collaborated on. So maybe when I'm an old man in the rocking chair, I'll be like, yeah, I did help a lot of people become authors. That's kind of cool.
You're gonna have the whole bookshelf behind you of
All
all
right.
the books that you've done. It's gonna be many, many, many of them, and I'm sure more to come. And I think that's like the cool part about it is, we're at this, younger phase or version of ourselves. Like, what's our story gonna be like later? When we've accomplished more things, and done more. And I think that's also too, like, what it's about, like striving for what our future self is going to thank us for, and putting in the reps, like you talked about, day in and day out, like what we're doing now to set ourselves up so that we can look back on our life when we're old in that rocking chair, and know that we made a difference, and not just, selfishly for ourselves, but we've helped to create a community and impact more people and give back. And I think, the co-authoring books that you've done, have really, really amounted to that and inspired other people who maybe never thought about writing a book, writing one chapter to become an author. I think is a great thing to get started with. So if you guys are thinking about putting your story out there, even for myself, I did it 15 minutes every day in the morning while I was working as a school site principal. I look back now, I have no idea how I did that, but done. And it's great. And now I know I have something out there as a resource, something that like the younger version of me would have loved to have. And I think that's part of like being an author and giving back. It's like we are literally gifting something to somebody that we wish we would have had at that time. Yeah.
That's good. And props to you. I forgot you actually wrote that chapter. And if I'm not mistaken, you wrote your entire first solo book while you were still working your day job before you
I
were a full-time
sure
entrepreneur.
did. Yep, that's
So
what I'm
props to that.
saying. I
Yeah.
don't know how I did that, Taj, but
Hey, well, you did it.
I
Congrats.
had I had a great book coach right here.
Just passing the knowledge along.
Love it, love it. Yeah, so great work with Thrive After Sports. And what do you see on the horizon? Do you have anything cooking in the works?
Oh, well, you and I got something cooking business-wise that we were just talking about that before. We have a very exciting meeting coming up tomorrow.
Mhm.
Um, and this actually perfectly spirals off the books because, of course, that's a great way to bring other people like us who are athletes turned entrepreneurs, people who serve the current and former athlete community. But, recently you and I started exploring ways outside of publishing books and becoming authors, like that we can bring all of these people together. Because like we talked about, there's so many people who, we all as athletes come from, unless you played an individual sport, we come from a team background. And what we've seen is a lot of people stepping up to help the current and former athlete community, which is great. But a lot of people are so focused or, in their silos building it by themselves. And like we've been talking about for the past however many months, we can be so much stronger if we come together as a collective. So that's what excites me, is partnering with you and partnering with all these other great people in our network to come together and really start to make bigger change. In the not just the transition space, but like NIL and all these great people who do different things, because it's not just like people helping with transition. There's people who serve athletes in many different capacities. And so my analogy is always like, it's almost like a Justice League of people. If we come
I
together,
love it.
yeah, we're a lot stronger. It's more like a
Yeah.
committee, or like we have a lot more influence than just me and you, or just me by myself trying to go to a university or like a corporate sponsor to try to support athletes, versus like, this is a movement. This is like a team of people. So that's what I'm most excited about right now, making like change on a structural level to how the transition and athletes are supported in general.
Yeah, and I think, and like Taj had talked about, I think he put it perfectly here. There's definitely power in numbers. And in the last 2.5 years I've been in this space, like there are so many talented people, like he talked about, and I think we are all in our silos, trying to work together, but haven't really come together, to make something happen. So you guys that are tuning in, please be in the loop on all of this. And the way to do that is to connect with us on social media, definitely, for any announcements. So Taj, do you also want to go ahead and tell everybody how they can get connected with you?
Yeah, TajDashaun.com, just like it's spelled on the screen, is the best hub for everything. You'll find all the links to my social media platforms on there. Of course, the links to my podcast. My podcast is available on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. The episodes are on YouTube also, but I mean, I got to step my game up and have my show looking like Sarah before I, drive you to YouTube. Just listen to the audios for now before I get my visual side up.
No worries. You'll get hooked up soon. I'll get my song and you'll get your background. So it'll be all good. See,
Perfect.
teamwork.
There we go. Like we were just talking about, that works. But yeah, TajDashaun.com is the best place. I'm most active on LinkedIn and Instagram. Oh, and my books are on my website as well. So just go there. I'm not hard to find, and I'll respond to you within a reasonable manner if there's anything I can help out with. Yeah. So hit me up.
And don't be fooled, you guys. Taj has great content out there. He may not have, an in-house graphic designer like I do, but he was one of the first ones I started to listen to, and his YouTube has tons of information on there, guest interviews, even solos. I've always been inspired by the ones where literally, maybe it was after a run or whatnot, and you just came on whatever was speaking to you at the moment. And those have been some of your greatest episodes, I would have to say. So keep that in mind on the fly.
Thank you. You really have been listening for a while. That was the early days when
I
was
told
like
you.
afraid to get on camera. I was like, if I don't do this now after this run, I'm never going to record it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So we've got some comments that I want to also show up here as well. So bear with me just a second. You guys know that this is new for me, so I'm getting acquainted with everything that is on here. And again, if you guys have any questions or you want to interact with us, go ahead and drop in the comments. This is kind of like our Q&A portion at the end of the show. We're getting close to wrapping up. But we had Andy Lepe saying season 3 starting off with the top hit guest, of course, no one else but Taj Dashaun. And Belford Williams also has a question here. How would you recommend student athletes actually seeing themselves outside their identity of being their sport, even though that's the only thing they've had experience doing?
Well, I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier about cultivating clarity. It takes practice. And I'm not sitting here on my high horse acting like I was doing that while I was playing. Like I wasn't. It was just, I'm Taj, the football player. And when I'm not on the field, I'm, playing Madden or something. So what I would recommend though is, of course, getting guidance from people like Sarah and myself and other great people in the world who are doing this type of work. Whether that's direct coaching, tuning into the podcast, just getting info, reading our books, but also spending time working on it. And that's what I mean by cultivating clarity. The way that you develop that image or identity for yourself outside of your sport is by, as cheesy as it sounds, you sit there with the pen and paper, you stare out the window, you get your cup of tea and your coffee, and you just envision where you want your life to go. It's so simple that most people just don't do it because it's that simple. That's how I would answer that. Sarah, I know you got some game on that for sure.
Oh man, I think you hit the nail on the head, but definitely going inward, I would say. And I think that's any time that you're having maybe like a shift in your life, or you're feeling like, man, there's something else out there for me. Like you got to get quiet and still. For myself, it was getting out in nature, even if it's just going for a walk, getting outside, because no matter how much you like sit at your computer screen and you want, things to come to you, like it's not going to. You got to get some movement. And then like Taj talked about, like just journaling, your thoughts. There's so many thoughts. I forget how many thousands of thoughts that we have per day that like we're not really in tune with, that are going through our head, but to actually put it down on pen and paper will really help you to kind of sort things out. Just like you would like a math problem, right? How many times have you tried to do a math problem in your head versus actually working it out with a piece of paper? You're probably going to more likely be more accurate if you're actually putting things with pen to paper. So I think that's a great thing that you can do for yourself, and not just as you're transitioning and leaving the game, but anytime, you're having some difficulty, go inward, find some peace.
Great advice. That analogy you gave about, you wouldn't try to solve a math problem in your head. That's a gem. I hope that didn't go over anybody's head. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
And we got another question here. How would you advise student athletes leveraging their playing days to help with networking that will help them after they're done playing?
Man, shout out to Belfort, by the way. Anytime I'm doing some sort of live event, I know you've seen Belfort too. Anytime we're doing something live, Belfort is in the comments. So shout out to you, man.
Awesome.
Thank you for the love and for coming through with great questions like these. I would say, once again, this is going to sound like a really simple answer, but it's almost like the question almost answers itself. Like leveraging your playing days to help with networking. I would say while you're playing, network. And I know it's not like there's you have a full schedule where you could I'm not talking about network events, but like, I mean, unless you can go to networking events, but the power of LinkedIn can't be understated. Even if, you're not sure what you're doing, but if you're in a major, even if it doesn't end up being like the field you go into, you should be trying to connect with people in the community. One good thing I did, because at one point I was going to be a physical therapy major, because just, a lot of athletes want to be physical therapists.
And that was me too. Athletic trainer.
I didn't have the grades though. Once they were like, you're going to have to do this basket weaving major because you're not going to pass, the health sciences school.
Oh, God.
But anyway, my point with that was when I was doing that, and I haven't thought about this in a while, but one thing I did was I would like just Google physical therapy clinics in the area. And like during the off season, I would like call them or, try to get an internship. And by the time I actually locked in an internship, I had to switch majors because I didn't have the grades. But at least I was putting myself in front of the right people and trying to network. So that's the best advice I can give on that.
Yeah. And even afterwards too, I mean, for the work I do now, like I still go back to the connections that I had when I was a player, right? So I went back to, people that I was either teammates with that are in the athletic space, or maybe directors or coaches that I have connections with as well too. And I think leveraging the people who you are around with, and it doesn't mean like, you have to check in with them every day, but every now and then, like drop them a note or an email or something like, hey, how are things going? Just to kind of keep it top of mind that whatever type of work you're doing or what you're seeking or searching for. Because I think one of the things that I didn't realize was that there are so many people that are there at the university that want to help. They really do. And it's not because, like I had an ego and I didn't want to reach out. It was just like, I think I was so overwhelmed with everything. I didn't know that there were certain programs and things. And that's what I've also seen with the universities now, is they are really making more of a point to make networking and career opportunities for athletes, which didn't exist when we were leaving the game. So I think, kudos to the universities that are starting to do that, because I really think that, building that sense of community and family will continue to have the alumni come back and want to be part of the university. And that's how you grow and expand your network too. Yeah.
Great point. Universities are stepping it up. I remember when I graduated, and like you said, it makes the alumni want to be engaged. Right. Because the only call I got when I graduated was, hey, do you want to donate?
Oh, same.
I'm like, bro, I just graduated. I don't even have a job. How about you donate to me? Give me some money.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's not a way to build that community, right? Like you want your alumni to come back, but you got to make them feel like, they're wanted more than just their pocketbooks.
Yes. So, yeah. And like you said, take care of them while they're there.
Right.
And while they're leaving was another great point. You brought up.
Yeah. We got one more from Belfort. He's definitely our top student right now. Love it though. No, this is great. What was your slap in the face moment when you transitioned into adulthood after your playing career, and how did you make it through it?
I literally, it's funny. He said slap in the face. I literally like kind of slapped myself in the face because so it was like a Saturday night. This is when I was back home, still unemployed, was out drinking till like 2, 3 in the morning, whatever. And I probably slept in till like 11 a.m. or noon because it's not like I had anything to do the next day. So I woke up hungover, and this is after being home for like 6 months, probably more, almost a year after graduation. And I was just like, what are you doing with your life? Like I was gaining weight. I couldn't like even run a mile or run up the street without, huffing and puffing. And so the moment was like, I went over to the sink to like brush my teeth and get my day started at noon, and whatever I was going to do, whatever, I didn't have anything planned, probably playing video games or something. And so I was looking in the mirror and I just did not like what I saw, not only physically, but like, just kind of the look in my eyes was like, man, this is not who you are. Like what I saw on the outside didn't represent who I wanted to be. And from there, I like cut out all the drinking and partying, started getting serious about my self-improvement, reading books, listening to podcasts, applying for jobs, even though I didn't know what kind of job I wanted. At least I was doing something to like move the needle. So I was splashing water on my face, like almost kind of slapping myself to wake up, not literally slapping myself, but that was my moment for sure.
Wow. Yeah. And I'll be brief with mine. So right when I finished from Cal State Fullerton, I moved back home. Plan was to go to the teaching credential program, and I went to the mailbox thinking that I was going to get my official transcript. And I opened up, there's a letter from Cal State Fullerton that said, I actually didn't graduate. And I was like, wait, what? I already went and walked the line. I had my graduation party. Like I moved back home. What do you mean I didn't graduate? And plus I've been there for 5 years. Like, how are we going to get that math wrong? Right.
Right.
So I went back, and what it was is I got a C- in one of my major courses, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but the Cal State system at the time had just moved over to the plus minus system. So a C- was the same thing as a D+. And in your major coursework, you can't get a failing grade of a D or an F. Otherwise, it's not a passing grade. So that was my first big slap in the face. And it was a reality check for me because it also taught me that I needed to be in charge like of my life and what I needed to do moving forward, and not just rely on, other people to, do things for me. And it really went back to that spring semester where I got into partying. I wasn't really focusing on academics. And I look back now, and that was definitely a time in my life where, I felt depressed and I didn't know it at the time. And so, yeah, that was my first reality check. But again, I think things happen for a reason, because I went to bartending school after that, as you guys all know that have been listening to my story. And it was probably one of the best jobs that I had, because it taught me so much about just being out in the real world and not being an athlete anymore. I remember telling people like, yeah, I used to play D1, volleyball in college. And they're like, oh yeah, that's cool. Okay. Like get back to work. It's like,
Get back to work.
I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm, just the same as everyone else. So it definitely humbled me. And I think that's part of it is, we are in the spotlight, right? Like when we are playing and we are almost on this pedestal because we are a collegiate athlete. And then afterwards we go into the real world afterwards, and we gotta make our way. Like we gotta, again, prove ourselves. Even though we've proved it all on the court, we got to do it in life after sports too. Yeah.
Get back to work. That happy roll.
Get back to work. Yeah. Go bust the tables. There you go. Oh man. And Belford said, great show. Thank you for all the content. Thank you, Belford. We appreciate you tuning in and participating, and very cool that he shows up on all your shows. Taj, you must be a super fan.
Yeah. Thanks, Belford. Now he was there for like the Tackle What's Next event too, that you were also speaking on.
Nice.
I think he showed up on a panel that you and I were both on.
Yes.
So
Yep. That's
Belford's
awesome.
everywhere.
That's great. So Taj, I got one final question for you before we wrap up. Something I'm going to ask all my guests this season. What's something surprising that you learned about yourself since you left the game?
Something surprising. That's such a good question. I think the main thing is that I'm always And I say it's a surprise because it took me time to realize this. Like I didn't realize it at first. I'm always going to be a competitor. I'm always going to have the energy of like, I want to win. I want to get better. Like, but it was surprising to learn that even though I didn't have football anymore, I could apply it to whatever I choose. So if that energy is channeled in the right way, then I can make great things happen and ultimately like have a great quality of life and be happy with what I'm doing every day. That's the biggest thing. It took me a while to realize that. So it was a surprise. And once I realized it, you know how it is. Once you're like, oh, wait a minute, I can still like I'll still like be walking around the house, like juking the walls and stuff, doing stupid stuff. When I go for runs every day, I'm not just like jogging around the block. I'll be like in the middle of the street, like pretending like, I'm covering a receiver, like jumping up to get the ball. So,
I love it.
That spirit never leaves. And so, and this as well, Dr. Sarah, like it's how you channel that energy that makes all the difference in the world. And you and I have found a way to help others, give back. Yeah, that's not even what you asked. That's the biggest surprise. I was going on a tangent again.
No, I love it. Channeling your energy. And that's what it's all about. And I love how you still go out for runs and you do all that. It's that inner athlete in us. Like it's always going to be there, right? But it's how we package it and how we repurpose it and how we go on with our lives and life after sports, because we're always going to be that athlete no matter what. And I'm sure you're still going to be an old man out there running and doing your stuff. And you're still going to be, pretending like you're part of the defense. Like that's just in you.
Right. That's that golden skill set.
Yes.
I did there. I brought it back.
Oh, I love it. Oh man. Well, Taj, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been a pleasure. You guys, there were so many gems that were dropped today with Taj as always. And your story, incredible things that I learned about you. And that's what I love about, every time that you and I get together and have a conversation, I feel like we're both learning from each other, and we're just going to continue carrying on and being teammates in life after sports. Cause that's what it's all about. You guys finding your next set of teammates.
That's right. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be your teammate in this game of life that we're in. Super excited for what you have on the horizon. Like even just this first episode and the way you're rolling out the, season 3 and even all the other things that you have going on outside of this. Just excited for you and excited to be connected with you. Like I always say, don't forget about the little people who believe in you when you make it big. I don't want to have a situation where I can't get a hold of you. Like Sarah, I tried to call your assistant.
Oh man, come on, Dad.
But thank you, seriously.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your kind words. And man, like I said from the beginning, I'm just trying to keep up with you. So
and you're out, like I told you, you're outpacing me in many ways right now, including the show.
Not at all. We're running together. So yeah, but anyways, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Rebranded Athlete podcast. Make sure, like I said in the beginning, to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes this season. And if you could do me a huge favor, please leave a review either on Apple or Spotify podcasts. It would really help to continue to keep promoting the show. My goal this season is to really help to promote this, to get in front of as many athletes globally as possible, because that's what this is all about. It's not about me. This is definitely about the athletes and getting the stories out there. Because again, the stories that these guests are bringing, just like Taj today, these are the things that I wish I would have had an opportunity to hear and listen to as I was going through my transition as well. So the other thing I want to announce as well is that the Rebranded Athlete website, rebrandedathlete.com, has just been completely renewed. So go take a look. I'm really focusing this time on the podcast. And of course, there are resources and ways to work with me on there as well too. If you have any questions, any point in time, feel free to connect with me. Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you can find me. I would love to help you and really set you up for success in life after sport. So be sure to tune in live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I will catch you next time on the Rebranded Athlete podcast. I hope you all do well. Take care, and we will see you next week.